Hi, I'm Iwan Fox and welcome to this special 2025 British Open Championship preview, where I'm joined by my colleague Chris Thomas to chat about what is arguably the most prestigious brass band contest in the world. The 171st British Open will take place at Symphony Hall on Saturday the 6th of September, starting promptly at 10 a.m, with the first of 18 performances of a newly commissioned test piece entitled Star-Crossed Lovers by Stephen Roberts. It's the third time he's written a work for the event, following Arabian Nights in 2013 and Reflections on Swan Lake in 2015. He also arranged movements from Holst The Planets, which were used in 2003. He is also adjudicating this year as well, and will be joined in the box by the experienced duo of Anne Crookston, who returns for a second successive year, and David Hirst, making his debut, but one of the most experienced adjudicators in the UK banding movement. Our main topics of conversation tonight then are about the event and its outlook, the music, the bands, and of course who we think may be in with the best chance of lifting that famous Gold Shield trophy. Your opinions are key to that, so please be part of the live discussion by posting your comments in the YouTube comments box on the screen. We look forward to hearing from you. So, hi Chris, it's great to have you back.
Good evening, Ewan.
We've enjoyed a summer of concerts and events, but now it's back to the nitty-gritty, really, of what we do the second half of the contesting season. And as I said a little bit earlier, arguably, we're kicking off with the most prestigious brass band contest of all, the British Open. It really is the contest that all bands want to win.
It is, and I think part of it is it's the oldest, Ewan, isn't it? It's it's by far the longest running contest. It's the contest where that prestige just seems to be sustained from year to year. It's never subsided. It's arguably the most difficult contest to win. You've arguably got the best range of bands playing there, so it is, and of course it's in the wonderful Symphony Hall in Birmingham where you've got wonderful acoustics, etc. So yeah, it still has that prestige, doesn't it? Even if you go back to the days we used to play in it, Ewan, which was quite a while ago now, but it goes back a lot longer than that, believe it or not. So
I think it is about that history, really, isn't it? Is that because it goes back to 1853, because of the bands and the characters and the giants, really, who have been associated with the events, not only as players and conductors, but the people who ran the event, etc. And of course, it does take place in one of the great, and it really is one of the great concert halls, not just in the UK, but worldwide. Symphony Hall is, a revered concert hall, so we are very, very fortunate to get to play there, the bands, and also it does attract a worldwide audience. Ticket sales again have gone really well. It's close on to 2,000 tickets have been sold,
which is marvelous,
and thanks to the WOB Play World of Brass, people as far afield, as New Zealand and the USA, wherever they are across the world, can enjoy the action and really revel in those performances from those really great bands. So with that in mind, then, we're talking about it. I'm going to say, what are your memories of that? Have you got good and bad memories of playing in the British Open? I know we go back a little bit, so we'll have to dust them off,
don't we? I think the last time I played in the Open was 1993. And in fact, I only played in the Open a few times, but I remember back in those days, of course, it was in the Free Trade Hall. So although I played in Symphony Hall, I didn't play in the Open at Symphony Hall. I think you did, didn't you, Ewan? Did you play it in the Open at Symphony Hall?
Yes, I did. I played a number of times there. Sometimes okay, sometimes badly. I can't tell you that, but there we have.
I well remembered. I remember playing Cloudcatcher in 1992. That was the first time that I played in the British Open, and for me then it was a huge thing. I played in the Nationals final several times then at the Albert Hall, but for me playing in the Open was really the pinnacle of my banding years at that point. And I can remember playing with Desford, going on stage playing Cloudcatcher, and Stephen Roberts, strangely enough, was conducting us that day, I remember, in 92. And it was one of those days where we went on the stage, thought we'd played well. We had a lad called Alan Hobbins, Darryl Hobbins, Alan Hobbins' brother, playing on soprano.
Right, yeah, I remember,
who won the solo award, and we thought, that's it, we've won. And we ended up ninth. so I had the elation of playing in the British Open for the first time, and then the humiliation of actually ending up about 8 or 9 places lower than we thought we were going to finish. So, hey ho, that's contesting.
Yeah, well, you get it. Well, I have to say the good ones for me, I've been very fortunate. Associated with the band, didn't play with the band when they won the British Open Championship twice. I remember with on Arabian Nights, I managed to get into the audience. I was doing something. We were doing the coverage on 4Barsrest in those days. Managed to get a seat next to Ray Sykes, the great Ray Sykes with Carlton Prickly Colliery. I think we were drawn number 8, and the band played. And I hadn't heard any other bands, and he just turned around to me and he said, "You've won that today." And I looked at him with bemusement, and he said, "No, nobody's going to beat that." And lo and behold, came right at the end of it, and the band won it. So Ray, fantastic man, he's a great judge of brass band. I have to say, with regards to that. As a bad one, though, I remember as a player, it wasn't at Symphony Hall. It was actually when the Open was at Bridgewater Hall. Marple won on the day as the last band. Tredegar came second. Played wonderfully well. The soprano player had a bit of a mare. And I played okay up until about 3/4 of the way through. My lip had gone then. And thank goodness they don't put it on wob play anymore, because there's a splash, which I go for one of the top notes towards the end of it. I think it's still racing around Manchester. It is even today. It's like a Fernandez penalty. It is against Grimsby or whatever. Right over the bar it went. But there we are.
I think it's fair to say our playing days are well behind us, Ewan, isn't it?
It is. But there we go. So plenty to look forward to. As I say, the prestige of the competition is such now that all these bands really want to go there. There's a picture there on it. Look at that trophy. That is a trophy that any band anywhere in the world would love to take home with them. Very fortunate. It was in my bedroom for a year once. That's why I had to store it. Don't tell the insurers. But it's an absolutely fantastic trophy. Of course,
it is.
It's a Scottish trophy. It's not a British trophy. It was first presented in 1924. And if you look closely at the top, there's some names. I think it was to do with the Edinburgh or something like that, charities competition. But it's a fantastic, brilliant. I took it once to a jeweller's where we had to have it engraved, and it was refurbished. And he kept it. He put it in his safe in the shop. But he used to bring it out in the day, put it in the window. And he said he had more trade from people just walking past, wanting to know what the trophy was and what it was about. And then they walked in, he sold them a pair of earrings or an engagement ring or something like that. He did. So I'll have to go back to him to see if he can actually do that there as well. So great to have, all these bands, 18 fantastic bands that will be coming, kicking off at 10 a.m. Before the bands kick off, you've got the Birmingham Citadel band will be providing fantastic music. But then I'd say all the serious stuff kicks off at 10 o'clock. And it's all about the music. And the music this year is Star-Crossed Lovers by Stephen Roberts. I think we have to get one thing out of the way to start off with, and it's on behalf of the bands. There has been errata, a number of errata, or errata, I would have thought, if that's the plural of errata, which has been sent out to the bands. He has tried so very, very hard to make sure that the score was done properly, but it has caused problems and a little bit of frustration for the bands. It hasn't. I don't think the bands themselves have, it's going to spoil their enjoyment of actually playing. It's certainly not going to spoil how difficult the piece is for them also, but it has been a little bit of a niggle for a number of bands. And I have to say that one of the questions that we've had from the first person who has come in and joined us tonight, and it's come in from Alan Douglas from the Cooperation Band, and he makes a good point with regards. He says errata in new commissions seems to become a recurring issue. Everybody wants fresh, challenging music, but should bands really be expected to deal with avoidable mistakes under contest pressure? It's a decent point, well made, I think.
Yeah. I mean, there've always been errata, and I mean, you go back to the years that we were playing. I'm going back 30 odd years. There've always been errata, but you would think that in this day and age that there were means by which the risk of it would be maybe not completely eradicated, but certainly reduced. But in recent years, we seem to be having an increasing number of mistakes, not a decreasing number. So certainly, I think there's nothing more disruptive. I mean, I think was it 12 pages of errata that were issued on this particular score?
A lot of them are small things, and bands work them out, and that part of it. But it can be annoying when you sat for the first 5 minutes in rehearsal and you've got to go
rehearsal
through your parts
time that's going, and and I think that's what really understandably frustrates and annoys. So yeah, it's something that I think greater care has got to be given to, and there's there's no excuse really for errata on that kind of level.
Interesting, though, Alan does go on a point. He says, so why not road test scores with the top non-competing band before the pieces are released, so problems are ironed out before they land on the stands? Again, another good point, and I know that in this respect, the International Staff Band played the piece and did some run-throughs on the piece, whatever. But there is a possibility, I think it's about more modern thinking more than anything. I know we hung up a little bit about the bands having the piece, everybody having it at the same time, and you're not able to play it in public. Oh, let's get over it. If we could be part and parcel of the process and have that cooperation with the bands, which is something which the bands, I think, themselves want, the UK Forum, etc., is asking for that little bit of cooperation, work together, and a lot of these little niggly little problems, and not just with regard to errata, other pieces of work, that can be sorted out. So it's a good point, again, well made by Alan.
It is
working together, more modern with the outlook, telling people what it's about. It's not going to change anything to do with the contest result on the day.
No,
but I just think it shows, a greater understanding of the needs and the requirements of the performers.
Yeah, and it allows players and bands to maximise their rehearsal time, as we say, which is really what it's all about. You don't want to be spending rehearsal after rehearsal constantly looking at revisions to the score and the parts. So that time is valuable to all of the competing bands and the players.
Yeah, and I think again he goes on. He said, "What about the conflicts of interest? When a composer is also the publisher and even the adjudicator, does that put them themselves under that little bit of extra pressure?" And it is. Self-publishing is a difficult thing to do. Stephen Roberts, very talented musician, it is. You may say sometimes then the focus moves away from the music, which, we'll talk about the test piece, and it can go on then, and the gripes start to happen, really, where you should be concentrating on the quality of the music that we're actually playing. But again, if something can be done in a way in which people can work together, both the bands and the organisers, the composer of the piece, I don't think you're ruining anything with the integrity of the competition if we're a bit more open about things.
I mean, I have to say, I don't have any problem with conflicts of interest with composer-publisher. I mean, there are so many composers who self-publish now. They have to. It's the only way realistically that they can get their music out there. The technology helps. The technology enables them to do that. But there are plenty of composers out there who self-publish. In fact, there are not many that are lucky enough to have publishers behind them these days. So I have no problem with that. Composer in the box, that's a very different question, and I think we'll probably touch on that in a little while, won't we, when we're talking about the piece. So,
well, talking about the piece itself then, Romeo and Juliet. In fact, I understand it may be a reprise. And you're going to tell me why, because I didn't realise this. Go on, what's the reason for that?
Look back through your history, Ewan. 1878, Meltham, under the great John Gladney, won on Romeo e Giulietta. Sounds like a cigar, actually, doesn't it? Romeo e Giulietta. But yeah, 1878. Obviously not Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet, because it wasn't written in 1878. But not the first time that the subject and the Shakespearean play has been used as the context for the music and for a British Open test piece.
Well, I think that just shows there what's happening at the end of the... Not going to give away the tale. It's a bit like Titanic. Everybody knows what's going to happen at the end of it. Although, touching on that, when I think the first time the Prokofiev was played, the ending was actually different. So it was a bit like, the Titanic, heading towards the iceberg, and then at the last moment doing a Phil Bennett sidestep and shooting around it and missing it. But this is the case there. Fair play to, you had the lady there. So, Romeo and Juliet, Prokofiev, he wrote the score to the ballet in 1935 and put a happy ending on it, which, given at the time, there's a picture there, one of them, of those two gentlemen, is Mr. Prokofiev, the other one is Mr. Joseph Stalin. And Stalin, there was doctrinal Marxist orthodoxy which had to be followed by just about everybody under his command. And it meant that sometimes composers were accused a little bit later of formalism. And it meant that a lot of composers lived in fear of having a knock at the door at about midnight and being sent off to what Alexander Solzhenitsyn called the Gulag Archipelago. And once you went there, you very, very rarely came back. I think Shostakovich was most famously the one who lived in the most fear of that.
Correct. Yeah.
But I'm quite sure...
Prokofiev probably less so, but I'm sure it was always there.
Yeah, well, he was denounced, I think, in 1936 in Pravda. So it was after that he had put the happy ending on. So that may have come to some reason why he then quickly changed it and went back to the original. Stalin, by all accounts, used to get he knew his classical music by all accounts, but he used to have this. The recordings were pressed for him immediately after a concert and sent to him. He would listen and then he would write. I think it was a blue pencil, I think, if I remember rightly, and he would write good, average, or rubbish on it. And if it was rubbish, if it was rubbish, then you were in trouble. So there's the background, really.
Well, it was most. I think talking Shostakovich, that was probably most neatly encapsulated after Shostakovich's Fourth Symphony was performed, which Stalin most definitely did not like. So Shostakovich then wrote the Fifth Symphony with the tag "A Soviet Artist's Response to Just Criticism." And there's a lot of messages written in the Fifth Symphony as well. But that's a story for another day, Ewan.
That is a story for another day. By all accounts, at one point, when Shostakovich was actually being denounced in public, he was so frightened that he actually started applauding the person who was denouncing him. Because he had literally lost where his thought process whatsoever. I'm quite sure Prokofiev felt the cold chill.
Yes,
strangely,
sure
as you'd said, that a number of his works, even after the denunciation, is actually won about 7 different prizes, Stalin prizes. But that was balanced against his first wife being sent to Siberian labor camp for 20 years. So, on the one hand, he was lauded. On the other hand, everything was taken away from there. Yeah. Right then. So talking about the piece itself, we can just see on the screen, there's some details there of parts and themes that are within the score. Stephen Roberts is very cleverly, he says that he has sought the spirit of Romeo and Juliet and the ballet. And he's actually put together, it doesn't follow the narrative linear line of the ballet. Right. So in effect, it's really a series of character portraits which appear at different points in the ballet, and they're put in together to form the test piece. That's not to say that, they don't die first and then come back and then whatever at the end. There is a line towards it. But it's really about introducing the different characters. You've got a very naive, effervescent Juliet. You've got the biting, the virtuosic bravery, really, of Mercutio. Yeah. I think Romeo is seen literally like a 16-year-old love-lorn teenager. He's a little bit drippy, but he's in love with the girl that he's met in the balcony, so he's going to do that part of it there. And then you got the two warring families themselves, and Stephen Roberts has brought that all together, so you get almost these sets of scenes which are brought together all the way then to the final denouement, because if people know the story, it's about boy meets girl. Boy gets into a fight, somebody kills his friend, he then kills somebody else. The friar doesn't pass on the message, the nurse gives the wrong advice, they end up in the crypt. She takes a sleeping potion, but it's too much and is something like that. Or he takes a sleeping potion, she finds him on the floor, takes his dagger and then kills herself. And that's it.
And if you want it in a different context, think about the Sharks and the Jets in West Side Story, because the premise is the same.
And
premise is the same.
And strange as you say that, people will say, "Oh, there's a little bit of Leonard Bernstein in that, in some of the rhythms." But I think you find if you go back to the ballet score, they're actually in the ballet score.
Yeah, yeah.
So you don't need Bob Fosse, if you remember him, the one with the jazz hands and all there's a little bit of that. I think Jerome was the chap who did the choreography for West Side Story. So we've both listened to the piece. We both heard recordings of the piece. We both had the score. It's going to be a very interesting test. That tension he talks about, that juxtaposition between love and hate, about the naivety and wisdom, etc., really is within the writing that he has taken and got that spirit of from Prokofiev, and he's put it into the score.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. If anybody who is going to the contest on Saturday or is even listening on WOB Play hasn't seen it, pop yourself onto YouTube. Just search for Stephen Roberts, Star-Crossed Lovers, and you'll find Stephen's own little 20-minute synopsis of the piece. Really, really interesting on a number of levels. First of all, not just about the piece, because he talks about Prokofiev generally. He talks about Prokofiev's traits in terms of his melody writing, his harmonies, and in particular about Prokofiev's, I know he said Tchaikovsky then, didn't I? Prokofiev's ability to take a relatively straightforward diatonic tune and give it a twist with harmony, give it a different feel by using, in some cases, some quite quirky harmonies. And it's something that he applied in Romeo and Juliet as well. So you find that Stephen talks quite a bit about, as you say, the balance between the themes that encapsulate hate, the themes that encapsulate love, the constant battle that's going on throughout the ballet and throughout the original play as well, of course, but that he's tried to encapsulate in the piece. So when you look at those themes, those principal themes that we had on the screen a short while ago, those simple themes encapsulate everything within the work. But Stephen talks a lot about emotion. I mean, this is a very technical test piece in some ways. But it's also a test piece where Stephen is clearly, and we've got to remember Stephen's in the box. He's very, very aware of the emotion and that constant shifting of the tension that you talk about, Ewan, between the warring factions, if you like.
It comes right from the beginning, really. It's like a sliding series of chords.
Yeah.
And the way in which you do it, so you can hear the dissonance straight away as it comes in. And then it's immediately followed by a good old brass band contest in test of character, which comes with the cornet and euphonium. And then, right in the background, you got our great old tuba players, but God bless them. They'll be there thinking to themselves, right, I'm going to be there pumping it out all day. And they've got to come in, I think, is mezzo piano down to pianissimo with a bass trombone.
Yeah, and you've got about, I think you were about 8 bars in after those grinding dissonances that it opens with, which are the chords for Montagues and Capulets that you get pretty much lifted straight from Prokofiev's music, really. And then, as you say, you get this cadenza. It's literally about 8 bars in, isn't it? You've got solo cornet and euphonium soaring up to top Ds when they've literally just parked their backsides on the seat. So that's going to be a pretty tough start for the bands. And then, as you say, bass is sinking down to subterranean depths at double piano. It's quite a start, actually. It's quite a start.
It reminds me of a bunch of heavies in the background. You know, you said about the Sharks and the Jet. You know, they're the boys in the background, the big lads with the stilettos in their back pockets. You know, they're the boys. They're about the serious business with that part of it. After that, as you say, there are very, very quick elements. So it's almost like scene stealing, you know. You've got a very quick Furioso part of it there. You've got an interesting bit, which is a Lontano, which is a series of the mixed cadenzas, which are with the cornet.
With offstage parts.
Offstage. And that will be interesting to find out how the bands and the conductors both place their players and how they really integrate that into the performance. If it's too far away, then there's no point having the Sharks and the Jets, one of them down by Aston Villa Football Club and the other one's up by Birmingham City. You ain't going to get much of it there. So it needs to have a connection in its way there. And then after that, again, those tests, you need an absolutely red-hot cornet section. It really does fly about at high speed. I think it's about 168,
168, I think, presto. And some really, really difficult dovetailing of the cornet lines. I mean, it's shifting along really, really quickly.
It is.
And you've got these semi-quaver figures that are just being flung around between the second and third cornets, between the solo and the solo cornets and back row. It's really, really tough.
It is. And all the way through that. And then, of course, people who have, if you know the music, Prokofiev's music from the ballet, You know, there's some famous themes in it. You got Juliet, everybody's here. That one. So, but again, it's about the delicacy. You know,
Yeah.
Juliet was 13 years of age, so she was a sylph-like, figure, but very naive but effervescent. So that's got to be captured there, as you say. Romeo is a little bit, puppy dog love in that respect. But then as you go through that, the Dance of the Nights at the Masked Ball, which everybody will recognize the tune, but that's got to be played in a way that is about like a portent of evil, a portent of hate about it as well, because at the end of it, somebody's going to get stabbed and killed. But it's not about all heavyweight boxers just going out and smacking heck out of each other. There's still that balletic feel about the music.
There is, and actually there's a number of points there that you've made which I think are absolutely relevant. It is, as you say, a series of character portraits, effectively. So capturing, and that they shift very quickly, don't they? There's a lot of very rapidly changing moods through the music, and actually capturing that in a mercurial light way is going to be a really important part of capturing the essence of what Stephen Roberts has written. There's some really sort of light writing, isn't there? As I say, mercurial is probably the best word for it, where scherzo-like, delicate, balletic, as you say. So many different nuances to capture. There's a lot in there. And so much of that will come down to the interpretation of the conductors, as you say.
Well, I think you're in, rumours, people saying, I don't particularly like the piece or whatever, but I think the audience will, really enjoy the piece, because they would be able to recognise not both the melodies, etc., but because the way in which he has scored it, so very cleverly scored it, there is no place to hide. There's not a great amount of covering percussion work throughout it. And as you say, sometimes you get, sometimes in European test pieces, you get a lot of noise, and everything is covered up because it's so thickly scored. It is thickly scored here, but he's made the point that really, if you get the balance right, you'll be able to hear everything coming through. The one thing I would say is that it's a real stamina sapper. Blimey, O'Reilly.
16 and a half minutes of sheer stamina, Ewan, I think.
It is. And the last really 3.5 to 4 minutes of it is, when I think there's a part where I think the poor lovelorn Romeo comes in again, declares his love before he heads off down to the crypt. From there on, I think it's about 3.5 minutes. And if you look at the marking, it could be quite slow and it could turn into a bit of a dirge. But if it's still got that pulse, it's still got that expectancy, even though, as you say, the audience knows what's going to happen at the end, it still maintains that dramatic impulse. And as Stephen has done, he's actually twisted it back, because instead of having the very quiet ending, and we saw the picture a little bit earlier on with her prostrate over the dead body of her lover, it's a bit more triumphant. They are still dead, unfortunately, but it's more it's more triumph of the eternal love,
But to give you some kind of idea, Ewan, I mean, as you said, that from the closing bars from what's marked double G in the score, Adagio, quaver equals 80. If you just look, and I don't know how clearly you can see this, but you were talking about the density of the writing. I mean, it is. I mean, the approach to the end, my goodness, it really is stamina sapping. Seriously stamina sapping. Yeah,
the last few bars, I think there'll be a couple of them will be looking for the dagger and all the sleeping portion, where the lips will be gone on those. But it's great stuff. I think it's going to be a really popular edition. Interestingly, as you talked about ballet music and going back to 1878, there's not a lot of ballet music which has been transcribed to be used in brass band competitions. We had Swan Lake, of course, which was more fantasy on Swan Lake more than anything by him. And of course, famously, talking about a fantasy ballet, Joseph Horowitz's Ballet for Band, which is like a little miniature ballet, but in many ways captures the same essence of what Stephen Roberts is bringing here. That lightness, a touch, character-led writing, which is very, very difficult for modern day brass bands to actually capture. It's not something that they do, I would say, without much thought. They really have to give it a great deal of thought within their performances.
And there was Checkmate, of course, Bliss as well, which, but very, very different to the kind of piece that Star-Crossed Lovers is. But for me, it's the fleeting shifts in this score that will really well, largely define one performance from another, because those character traits, those character references, I think will really take some finding. So there's a lot to get out of the score, I have to say. There's a huge amount that can be found in the score, getting the clarity of the ensemble, of the textures in what, as you say, is quite densely scored music is going to be a big challenge as well. But in the sumptuous acoustic of Symphony Hall, I mean, what better place could there be to do it?
I think, yeah, if a band has got the cornet section that can really chatter their way with such clarity when it's really called for, and then still have the real stamina to get rid of the lactic, to say, never mind about the lactic acid in the lips, and really get to the end, maintaining that warmth and that balletic feel about it. They could be the ones that could do it. Interesting. We've had somebody from Simon Top who says, I have high hopes for the test piece, but reservations about the inspiration for the work. I think, as you say, I think excellent contemporary music, brass band to play, and it's a pity that it isn't being showcased. We've had plenty of contemporary music in recent years, and sometimes it's good, I think, to have something a little bit different. And this is, even though it's familiar music, I think it's that difference which will appeal. And I think the bands that have really caught hold of it, the conductors who really understand it, not saying they've got to play it as like a little small orchestra in a ballet pit or whatever, but they really understand the style of the music.
Yeah,
I think it'll absolutely come to life. It'll sparkle and come to life, and then right at the end we got that triumphant climax as they both end their days in each other's arms.
Yeah, I think conductors that have really studied the original Prokofiev orchestral score will understand what they've got to get out of Stephen Roberts' score. And as you say, to pick up on that point, Stephen Roberts has written several pieces like this, as you said, the Swan Lake, the Scheherazade piece, and they're written for a purpose. I think this piece will go down well in Symphony Hall. I think the audience will love it. I think it will be a very, very good contest on Saturday. Is it what I really want to hear from Stephen Roberts? Look, I know that Stephen Roberts has his own voice. I've heard original brass band pieces by him. I've heard original orchestral pieces by him as well. And I would love to hear him writing more in his own voice. But this piece serves its purpose. It was what he was asked to write. And ultimately, I think it will help, as I say, to create a very, very good contest this weekend.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about then, of course, who do you think is actually going to walk away with that gold trophy? Not who's going to die on stage at the end of it. Hopefully, there'll be nobody with that. But somebody will be triumphant at the end of it. And interestingly, I have to say, Alec Gallagher again has got back in contact with us. Very informed musician, Alec, and he's turned around. Even though it's not a contest piece, he said the best ballet music for brass band was not written for contests. I referred to Dark Arteries by Gavin Hirst.
Very good point. Thank you, Alec.
I have to say, and I was there when it was done with the Rambouillet Ballet. It was an absolute eye-opener. The one thing I would say as well, if you ever want to see the fittest blokes, and I mean fittest as in physically fit, have a look at a male ballet dancer. My word, they are built like the proverbial. Amazing. They are made out of cast iron. Their body so supple. The female dancers as well, so supple. But everything that they actually do is so rigorous. To be able to do it, have the artistry to do it, is quite incredible. And with regards to Gavin's music especially, it was so demanding, both the brass band part of it as well. But when it was brought together, it was a wonderful occasion. I always remember it was the only time at the Rambouillet, they said, in about 45 years, that when the curtain went out, the audience applauded before anything had even a note had been played, because they saw the band. I think we were behind perspex screens like riot shields, and then came there. But that was fantastic.
It's a great point from Alec, though. It really is.
It is, and so that we have to do that now. The other part where then we're talking about the contenders, because it is a competition, of course, and somebody is going to walk away with the biggest cash prize in banding. It's £5,500 to the winners. I have to say congratulations to whoever wins that. But it's a bit of forthright thinking, really, by the organisers, the Mortimer's family. I have to put my hand up. I'm a an unofficial advisor to the Mortimers with regards to the competition, not involved in anything else part of it, but they've really come up with it about trying to reward the bands who are successful at the competition. That's going to be a long-term aim for them there. So not only will the band take away the Great Gold Shield, they will get a nice little hefty chunk of cash to go with it. So, of the contenders then, Chris, we'll start off with, of course, the defending champions, which are brass band Tres Etoile. The Swiss really have made such an impression on the contesting world since Frederick Theodolo took over them in 2019. They are a quite incredible band. They double European champions. They didn't retain that, did the hat trick. I think they were drawn #1 on both occasions in Stavanger, but they played exceptionally well. Heck of a band, and you've got a funny feeling this may be a piece that may suit them very well indeed.
Yeah, really interesting this, because we've talked a lot about this business of emotion against, well, let's be honest, technicality. What we expect from Tres Etoile is a highly technical, highly precise performance, and I've no doubt that that's exactly what we're going to get from them. They are an incredible band. The level of technical precision they play with is just absolutely remarkable. What I'm going to be really interested in with Tres Etoile, and particularly given the fact that Stephen Roberts is in the box, is whether they can really convey that deep-seated emotion, capture the contrast that we were talking about. I have no doubt that the technical elements, I mean, they've got an amazing cornet section, Ewan, haven't they? And the cornet writing, which, as we've said, is so demanding in this piece, I'm sure they're going to play very well. But it's going to be very interesting to see, I think, what Tres Etoile do with this piece on Saturday.
It's interesting you say that as well, because the successes come in the last couple of years. They do play these huge pieces and they play them exceptionally well. And this, in many ways, is a little bit of a throwback, not back to 1878 when Romeo and Juliet was last year, but it is a little bit of a throwback. I think Malcolm would have said another piece, The Perfect Fool, Holst, which is, another. So again, if you've got to have an understanding how this type of music is actually played. If you go for the Bluebeard's Castle Bartok type of, smack it all over the place, that's not going to really, I don't think is really going to win the day there. But there is the opportunity here to really show a much more refined element of brass band play. Tres Etoile can certainly do that. There is no doubt about that as well. But in many cases, I think no wonder a lot of people will be looking at them and saying they possibly, as they were last year when they played, they would be possibly the band to beat. Now, two bands that have come the other way, not from Switzerland, but they've actually come, one from the northeast and one from the London and the leafy suburbs of Buckinghamshire. I think that's the best way. First of all, the Grand Shield champions. There is a link with Stephen Roberts here, because he actually led the Ever Ready band to success there at the Grand Shield. He's actually in the box, of course. He's not conducting him as well. That would take some doing if he was doing all that on the same day. But a fine band, and a band that's really rejuvenated. And, it's great to see that name, Ever Ready, although it's now, it's like a portmanteau now. It's actually brought together as their title, to see them back at this contest.
It's been a long battle for them to get back, and I can't remember offhand how many years they've been trying to get back. 13
years, I think, something like that.
It's a long time. And they're a good band. They've been through some ups and downs during that time, to be fair, as many bands have. But I think that win at the Grand Shield in May will have given them a huge boost of confidence. And it's great to see them back. I mean, when you look back over the years, Ever Ready were just an annual fixture at the Open, weren't they? I mean, back in our day, they were
always
there every
very,
year.
very solid.
It was taken for
band.
granted that Ever Ready would be there. It's an interesting touch that Stephen Roberts was the guy that's actually got them back to Symphony Hall. Yeah,
and the other band on the flip side of that, a band that, well, I think the last time that Ever Ready were actually playing at the competition, the Amersham band were playing in the fourth section, the London and Southern Counties regional championships. Great picture there, Paul Fisher, inspirational Welshman, the man who has played with madness. I don't think he's touched with a bit of madness there. I think he's actually doing it. But theirs is a story, and I think shows that for organisations which get themselves sorted, get the foundations in place and build incrementally to where they want to go,
Yeah.
Theirs is a beacon of what can be done. The amount of credit that goes to them to go in all the way. They had 3 successive promotions from the senior trophy, senior cup, senior trophy, and then through to the Grand Shield to get to the British Open Championships. I think it's a remarkable achievement and should really be something which people should follow.
Yeah, and the key word is organisation, as you say. It is an incredible organisation that they have there, and you know, the wonderful thing for Amersham, I think, and I hope they feel this, is that they've got nothing to lose on Saturday. They're going to play at the British Open for the first time on the back of having come up through the Spring Festival, as you say, in successive years. It's a remarkable achievement and the pinnacle of all those years of hard work that everybody at that organisation has put in. It is a wonderful story. I think we can all look forward to hearing them, because it's going to be a very, very special day for them on Saturday.
Well, we wish them good luck, as we do with Eveready and the rest of the bands. We've already got somebody coming in, putting their opinion forward. Keith Brown, who says, I think his choice is Corey, now with so many new players, have a greater challenge this year. So my pick is Fodens, who are on such top form. I wouldn't, with regards to that, never ever discount Corey and Philip Harper. Not at this event. They got a brilliant 23. I think it was 23 times in a row they came in the top 6. I think they came 11th or 12th last year. That ended it there. Even though they have had changes, they are still a remarkable band. And when they really do hit form, they can make the place just, it's like electricity goes shoot through an auditorium.
It is. No, absolutely. You can't write Corey off. And you know, Keith's right. They have had changes, quite a lot of new faces. You know, most of the changes have been quite well publicised, so it's going to be a different Corey that we'll see take to the stage on Saturday. But the sheer dynamism that Philip Harper brings to everything he does with the band will surely ensure that we hear a really exciting performance from Corey. Fodens, they'll be up there, Ewan, won't they? I mean, yeah, they will be up there for sure. But they've got some. I think they've got some really tough competition this year. I do think they've got some really tough competition. So, and you know, we've not talked about a few. We're coming on to a few other bands that are going to be up there, I think, as well.
It would be interesting to see Philip Harper and Russell Gray together in Ballet. like Peter Crouch and what's it in? What's it? Cranky? Was it one of the Crankies? A little one. But what I have to say with Russell, I think a lot of people realise, I think, he understands the emotional, lyrical side of making music better just about than anybody in the banding world. Yeah. And when he brings that to bear, especially with the Fodens band on top form, is one of the reasons why they've been one of the most successful bands under his command at major competitions. So those really are 2 bands to look out for. Yeah. I think a real worthy mention, I think, to the national champions, the Flowers band, who last year, I think they were drawn number 4. And put down a marker on the Lost Circle. I think almost immediately people say that's going to be the performance to be. It was beaten by an exceptional performance by Trésor.
It was.
But from any disappointment they would have had from there, I look at this, you know, that's what it meant to the winners, Trésor. You know, all their players around the Gold Shield there. But when Flowers played off the number 4, it was such an electrifying performance, such solidity about it, and artistry as well from the solo players. They may have been disappointed, but I think about a month later there was no need, because they deservedly then went on and won the national championships.
They did. They did. And, you know, we're all expecting to hear a fabulous performance from them on Saturday. Again, I think Paul Holland will find his way through this piece. He'll understand the tensions, the emotions, etc. I think, you know, Flowers, again, they're going to be up there for me, Ewan. They're a serious contender. I think they'll turn in a top-ranked performance on Saturday.
Yeah, they do. There's a touch of the virtuosity about them when they really do it. At the regional championships, they went the other way and did a showcase performance when really all they needed to do was a good solid performance. But when you hear players like Paul on soprano, and all the little solo players they've got around, all the solo players they've around the stand.
There's real artistry in that band, isn't there? Real artistry in the band.
There is something, and Paul has really got on the end of the baton as well, so they could be a real band to beat there as well. Other ones that you feel that may be in the hunt, Brickhouse and Rastrick, a lot of people saying that. David King, he's got a touch of that mercurial maverick about him at times when it comes to his music making. So this one could be a piece that really suits him.
Yeah, I think Brickhouse possibly I've got a little bit of a point to prove. I'm just looking back, and last year, of course, they finished 12th. So it was a tough year. Previous year to that, they were 7th. Previous year to that, in 2022, they were the winners. So yeah, a little bit of work to do for Brickhouse. I think that there's been a couple of performances recently from them where maybe they didn't quite have the sparkle that we would expect. But again, like Corey, I mean, David King is a magician. You can never write them off. He'll bring magic to it. He'll bring delicacy, lightness, drama. That's David King. He'll probably bring a few idiosyncrasies as well, because that's again what David King brings. But
I think if he inhabits the character, that's when he gets it. Anybody who saw him as Zorro at the Brassing Concert Championships would tell you it was fantastic to watch, and he was loving it. And if he's got that about him, about the piece, then there's nobody really better with them. Some of the other ones as well, I would say, would be dark horses. As anything with the competition, you've got those bands who travel with real hopes of winning. Those bands who think of themselves, we're in with a chance, but realistically top 6. The ones then are thinking, let's see what we can do. And then the ones are thinking themselves, hopefully we'll have a good day and do enough to survive. So some of the possible little dark horse bands that may be well worth people making sure that they don't miss.
Well, I think before we come to that, I should mention Black Dyke, Ewan, because Black Dyke were imperious when they won the Yorkshire Regional earlier this year, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing Black Dyke. I think there's a tremendous performance to be had from them. Dark horses are really interesting, aren't they? I've scribbled down a few names here. I'm really looking forward to hearing Cooperation, who've got that seam of energy that is Katrina Marzella Wheeler coursing through the band. Highly musical. She'll have really done her homework on the music, on its background. She'll understand it. And that's a band that just seems to be absolutely radiating musical energy. Yeah,
highly impressive at the European Championships. Highly impressive there indeed.
Yeah, I mean, another band, Oldbourne. With Glyn Williams conducting them, some really good results recently. And a band that might not necessarily be fancied by many, but there's always the possibility of them making an appearance in the top 6. You've got Tread, Ewan, which I don't expect you to comment on, but no,
I couldn't possibly comment on.
We always expect to hear a good performance from Chadiga, but then you've got a whole host of bands like Grimethorpe who haven't been out of the top 6 for the 3 years. We've got to remember.
Michael Bach will be with them again, and he really does bring something out of them. If it wasn't just, a couple of times, if it wasn't just for those little edges and clips or whatever, they would have really been in the top mix. But he managed to bring real musicality out of that band, and I think they're a band that's moving back towards where they were previously. I like the way that you did mention Albon. Glyn Williams is conducting and amazingly making his debut as a conductor at the event. He's actually, I think he's won 3 Best Euphonium prizes, 1 Best Instrumentalist prize as a player. I think going back over, I'm going to give his age away, well over 25 years he's been playing at the but he's making his debut as a conductor this year. He's done a grand job with Albon, and again, the other part with the flip side of that is a couple of bands that really do know that they have to do well to maintain their position here. Such is the standard, they're all more than capable of it. So even though you got the Oldham band, and Malcolm Wood has just come in to say that don't miss the Oldham Band because they have Roger Webster. The rumour mill, he says. It's never a rumour with Malcolm. He'll know this, I'm quite sure of it. And he said, the great Roger Webster, and he is the great Roger, will be playing, despite saying last year he was finishing. No, he's made more comebacks than Frank Sinatra.
How many
Roger.
times have we heard that?
Yeah, but what a player.
Yeah,
I have to point out as well, of course, there is this year is a Best Cornet award, which is being presented, the Philip McCann Trophy. And I say best cornet because it's not the best principal cornet. It could be a piano cornet player. It could be a third cornet player. The third cornet player's got a lot to do in this piece as well.
Absolutely. Yeah,
But Roger Webster, when you're talking about great cornet players at the British Open Championships, there's a man whose name would be engraved on any trophy. Remarkable player. Absolutely remarkable player.
Yeah, indeed.
So there's Philip McCann. That's not Roger Webster. That's Philip McCann. So Philip McCann is the man who has actually donated the trophy, and it's very specific because Philip McCann was had a very close connection with Harry Mortimer, and one of the specific reasons that he's given this is a trophy that's going to be given to who the adjudicators as really reflects the art of cornet playing. Not just the one who just shovels all the notes in, but there's an artistry about cornet player, and there are a number of cornet playing artists who will be on that stage on the weekend. They're going to be tested for certain because it's a difficult part. There's a certainly difficult part there. Other bands as well. Hammonds, I think, is a band that could do really well. Whitburn, they are
Luke Vertommen.
Luke Vertommen. They haven't had a lot of luck of late as well, but there's a band that on their day they've come second twice at the event, so they've shown they've got that quality.
And a fine conductor in Luke Vertommen. So
that really knows how to put everything together with the piece there. And KNDS Fairy Band with Phil Chalk came sixth last year, and again another band that's got that quality about them. You have to go back, I think, till 1998, the last time they actually won, but they've always been a band that has made an impression at this event, and I think as they did last year, that if they do that again, then we could be seeing them in the mix. So that's the bands that we will be looking out for. There's plenty of playing there also. Now, just another couple of things before we come to the end, just to round things off. Some of the other things that are going on at the event. Within the program this year, there's a feature on the only female composer to write for the British Open Championships, and that was that lady, Helen Perkin. And amazingly, you have to go back to 1957 and then again in 1961 when her pieces were written and were used at the British Open Championships. It's I'm going to say a story about fate in many ways, because she had a professional relationship with the composer John Ireland, which certainly didn't end happily ever after. And Helen Perkin got married and eventually emigrated to Australia. Ireland
probably to get away from John Ireland.
It was because he became absolutely poisonous, and she had to actually get away with him. But 1957 and 1961. It's long overdue that we have a female composer writing again for the British Open Championships, and there is plenty of compositional female talent out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we could rattle off quite a few names, Ewan, couldn't we? But there is, and it's just inexplicable, really, that is the case as you've just outlined it. I mean, there are many. You know, if we think about composers like Judith Bingham, if we think about more up to date Lucy Pankhurst.
Whose piece is being played at the Premier section of the Australian National Championships.
Ghosts of Industry, which we heard.
Fantastic piece.
Fabulous piece. Absolutely fabulous piece. So yeah, it's about time that really that was looked at. I was looking back actually the other day, and I'll throw another name at you, not because she wrote for the British Open, she didn't, but do you remember Phyllis Tate? A piece called Illustrations, written in the 1970s. I mean, again, Phyllis Tate was an active and actually very well respected composer in the UK for many years. Died, I think, 1990 maybe, something like that. But that's a piece that we rarely hear these days. So yeah, time for a reprival. Not that we're going to be hearing Helen Perkins' music at the British Open again. But
no,
it's
a pity.
That we do hear music by some of our very talented female composers.
It is. And talking about anniversaries, almost to talk about that, it would be 50 years ago to the day on Saturday when fireworks was used at the British Open Championships. Now, there was a maverick in Elgar Howarth, and there was a maverick in the man who conducted the winning band in Richard Evans. By me. Well, it would be fantastic if that type of, I wouldn't say, almost pyrotechnic explosion happens after the weekend. I don't think that's going to be the case with Romeo and Juliet. I don't think subject matter there. But the effect that had in 1975, what it happened to the brass band movement after that, and that was at the British Open Championships, who had the foresight really and the bravery to commission a work from a composer such as Elgar Howarth.
Well, there's a lovely little article by Tim Mutum in the program for Saturday, which I'd recommend everybody to read, because it's a typically beautifully researched piece by Tim, and there's some lovely little anecdotes in there, such as I think one of the conductors or several of the conductors commented to Harry Mortimer that this wasn't the sort of music that they wanted at the Open, and I think Harry Mortimer's stance on that was to say, "You finding it hard to conduct it?"
Yeah,
which was one. But there was also, I think, something about somebody heckling Elgar Howarth that day.
Called it rubbish, I think they did.
The box, which was you look back at it now, and you think even in 1975. Fireworks was not exactly cutting-edge contemporary music.
No, but it was possibly for the British brass band. It was interesting.
Yes.
It's interesting when they say everybody thinks of Harry Mortimer, this wonderful, genial, smiling, elderly chap. There was I talked once to a chap who was, I think he was the manager of Bellevue. And he said he was one of the hardest businessmen you actually ever had to deal with. He really knew what he wanted. It always reminds me, have you ever seen Porridge? They call it Genial Harry Grout. who had that little bit of menace about him there. He would go down well in Romeo and Juliet, Harry Grout would, for that part of it there. And I have to say, one congratulations, somebody will be a memorable weekend, and you never know what is going to happen, both to Paul Holland and Louise Renshaw. And they are going to be presented with the Isles and the Mortimer Medal. There they are up on the screen. Congratulations to both of them. Thoroughly well deserved. As I say, they are two people who have really done, in their different ways, have actually been inspirational figures in the music making that they've actually undertaken there. And I'm just going to say, back when Alec got back to me, we were talking about Helen Perkins, and he has said CSD Brass, and I think he's actually maybe going to hear them better. We'll be playing Perkins Island Heritage in their 2026 season. Fantastic. I think it's all about boats and, a great ship sailing. There's no forward to it. I don't know if I remember rightly, but Harry Mortimer said you've got to think about a sailing ship going out from the Straits of Dover and see there. So that'd be great to see that there. So there we go, and I think that really wraps it up for us on this weekend. One thing I would have to say is that you will not miss any of the action wherever you are across the world, thanks to World of Brass and Stagecast. You can go to the www.wobplay.com. You can sign up for the day. You will not miss a single bit of the action. You'll actually hear me wittering on again most of the day as well with the presentation. And also, Chris, you'll be doing the reporting with Stephen Mead. And for the people who want to do a little bit of adjudication themselves, I think hopefully we're going to come something up the screen. Steve will be providing his his
criteria-based adjudications.
It's criteria-based adjudications. And so we'll be putting that on 4Barsrest. So if you want to think to yourselves, as you want to try a little bit of adjudication, then have a go. You can use that system, or you can use the system that I used to do, or whatever you want to, and you can come up to find out who you may think is going to be crowned the 2025 British Open champions. And that, Chris, is going to it. We are really looking forward to it on the weekend.
Absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to working with you, Steve, the World of Brass team, and the organisers at the British Open Championships. We're looking forward to listening to the 18 performances of Star-Crossed Lovers by Stephen Roberts, provided by 18 world-class bands. And if you ever want to know what it means to win the British Open Championships, the last picture that we're going to show you before we leave tonight, and remember to subscribe back to us on 4Barsrest, is the smiles that greeted everybody who took a picture of the players of the Tres Etoiles band after they were crowned the 2024 British Open champions here at Symphony Hall. That's it, Chris. Many thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ewan. See you Saturday.
Seeing you on Saturday for what is sure to be a memorable British Open Championships. Many thanks. Good night.